So you want to improve the sound of your headphones. Maybe you have an old pair somewhere that's collecting dust, and maybe you want to spice up the sound so that you can enjoy them more and start using them again. Or maybe you don't like the sound of your main headphones. Maybe you're wondering if there's any modification you can do in order to make them sound better. Well, if that's the case, then you are in the right spot, because my name is Andrew Dandrew and I'm on a mission to search this entire wonderful universe for answers to the most important questions and explain these answers to you like you are 5. So let's modify some headphones and see if we can actually improve their sound. My test subject will be this pair of Audio-Technica M50s. I pretty much snatched them from a colleague who was about to throw them away because after many years of service in the audio army, they were pretty much falling apart. The headband cushioning and the ear pads were pretty much rotten. They were sticky and stinky, and you didn't want to put them on your face. Let's put it like that. And then the right ear cup swivel was held together by kilograms of super glue added in a very sloppy fashion. The cable was very stiff. And all in all, they were kind of a disaster, but the drivers still worked. So I figured they would be a great project. I didn't film the first steps that I did. This was long before I even had this idea, but I replaced the broken ear cup swivel with a 3D printed part since I had access to a 3D printer. And by the way, shout out to Michal Planaski, I hope I said that right, for designing and actually sharing for free a model of the Audio-Technica ear cup swivel. There's a link in the description below, but that's what I did. And then I figured I would also mod them to give them a removable cable. For this, I used 2 female RCA jacks that I had lying around and mounted one to each ear cup. I love this idea because now not only I can use any jack to RCA cable available, but I can also build a custom balanced cable in the future if I want to. The process itself was very easy. The main thing is just drill some holes in the bottom of the ear cup and then solder 2 wires going from the jack to the driver. To easily make the holes, I used scissors. For the left cup, I only had to enlarge the existing cable hole. So I used the scissors and I rotated it in order to make the hole bigger, just making sure to stop and measure frequently. And I stopped when the hole was pretty much the size of the jack. And then for the right side, I just used a very tiny and pointed screwdriver to drill a tiny hole. And then I enlarged it using the same scissors trick. It was very easy and it's much safer than using a drill. As far as wiring goes, the most important thing is to pay attention to solder the wires in phase. What I mean by this is, if for example you have a red and a black wire, you should take the red wire and solder it to the first leftmost terminal on both the drivers, and the black wire should go to the rightmost terminal on both drivers. If somehow you swap the wires on one of the drivers and you end up with the drivers being out of phase, it sounds more complicated than it is, honestly, and I think you're going to do a great job if you attempt this. Anyway, after fixing the wiring, the next step was to slap on some luxurious velour ear pads for my ears to indulge on. And now the headphones are actually fixed. Up until this point, everything I did was to fix these headphones and get them to be usable again. And now it's time for the meat and potatoes of this video. It's time for modding these headphones. The first step was to take an initial frequency response measurement. This is very important because we want to know what we're starting with. This will be of great help later when we'll be able to compare frequency response measurements and actually see what the mods we're doing are doing to the sound. This doesn't sound too good, but you get the idea. The initial frequency response measurement I took looks like this, and I think it describes what I heard pretty well. The M50s are known to have some very heavy hitting bass frequencies, and when you add velour ear pads, usually what happens is the bass goes down. But not with these ear pads that I used, because these have pleather on the baffle side, and I feel they made the low end even louder, to the point where it overpowers the mids, and I don't like the sound. I would consider an improvement if I can actually bring the low end down a little bit and improve the mids. The second issue I had with these headphones was related to the soundstage. Stock, they have a very narrow, thin soundstage that's very congested. I feel like the stock headphones sound very good for electronic music, for hip hop, for highly produced music, which uses a lot of synths and pop vocals and a lot of added electronic reverb, but I wanted to give them a much wider and deeper soundstage. I wanted to improve the mids and make these headphones actually usable with acoustic recordings. Headphones that you can use to listen to rock music, to jazz, to classical music, and get a sense of the space the band is playing in. This means one thing: open back conversion. We humans use, among other things, the reflections that are naturally occurring here in our pinna in order to localize sounds. And when you're wearing some headphones with a closed back, the backside of the cup creates unnatural reflections that add together with these natural occurring ones, distorting our perception of location. Open back designs, on the other hand, place the driver in a cup where reflective surfaces are kept to a minimum, and usually there's nothing in the back of the ear cup, and this leads to a lot less unnatural reflections. This, coupled with the fact that you now also hear the ambient noise floor, leads to the much more natural sound that is often associated with open back headphones. And this is what I'll try to achieve with this mod. On the back of the ear cup, the two aluminum rings are glued in place and can be pried apart using a X-Acto knife. The same thing goes with the Audio Technica logo. This is also glued to the ear cup, and I tried taking it away by puncturing a little hole with a screwdriver, but it didn't work, so I decided to instead use a drill and cut a lot of holes in the shape of a circle. To avoid drilling deeper than needed, I used the metal piece of a screw terminal in order to create a stopper that will let me know when I needed to stop drilling. I then proceeded to drill the holes and then use cutting pliers to cut away the back of the cup. Aside from the ugly remaining bits that I needed to file, I now had open back cups. These newly open back cups needed tuning in order to make them sound good. So the next steps implied a lot of experiments and new frequency response measurements to see how every little modification impacted the sound. And that's when I realized that I shouldn't have done the initial repairs that I did, at least not in the way that I did them, because the wire that I used was a little bit too stiff. The jacks that I used were poorly made and installed a little bit too permanently. And when taking the baffle on and off during the experiments, I ended up breaking one of the jacks, and I theoretically could have soldered the cable directly to the jack itself, but the solder didn't want to stick, and I ended up melting the plastic inside the jack, so I had to replace both jacks. Pro tip for you, if you're planning on doing this, keep some temporary connections in there, do your experiments, you're tweaking it. Only when you're done, install the final wiring and the final jacks. I learned it the hard way. Don't do the same thing as me. Getting back to tuning, the first thing I tried was taking away the felt ring behind the driver, thinking that this was going to bring the low end down without affecting the mids or the highs. But I was wrong, so I decided to keep the felt ring in its place, and I decided to tweak the low end a different way. The baffle already has tuning ports that are covered with paper. So first I cut open all of the ports using the X-Acto knife, and then I used masking tape to cover a different number of ports, taking measurements along the way. I felt the best balance was achieved when I had 3 ports open on each baffle and the rest of them closed using masking tape. The bass is now a little bit quieter. It's not weak by any means. You can still listen to some hip hop and feel the 808s if you want to, but you have a lot more space to enjoy the mids. The fact that the cup was now open already changed the mids quite a bit. I thought I needed to somehow bring the low mids down a little bit, but I did like the added body I felt when listening to electric guitars, to acoustic instruments, but I decided to create a grill for the now open back cup and add some polyfill behind that grill. Metallic mesh seems to be a very popular choice for creating grills, but I didn't have any. But what I did have was Blender, and you can have it too because it's free. There's a link in the description below. And I fired up Blender and I created a very easy and quick grill, and then went and 3D printed it. Now that I had the grills, I could add the polyfill in the hopes of absorbing the last remaining reflections in the cup. Since this cup wasn't optimized to be an open back cup, I still felt like there were a lot of surfaces that could reflect back some sound, and I wanted to see if these were the culprits for the dip and the high mids. So I added polyfill. I also added a thin layer of a black surgical mask, mostly for looks. I think the cups look a lot better this way, and the mask should be acoustically transparent enough in order to not affect the sound in a bad way. I didn't go overly scientific with the polyfill. I just took a clump that I felt was the right size, and I put it in the ear cup, and then I added the grill over it. And I was very curious to just put it on the measurement rig and see if it had an impact, and then also of course listen to the headphones. The measurement did show some change. It wasn't anything drastic, so I decided to put the headphones on my head, and guess what? I fell in love with the sound and I spent a few hours listening to music through them. The overall sonic picture is definitely better now. The sounds are better separated and it's much easier to pinpoint their exact location in the stereo field. Everything sounds a lot more natural. I think it was a great deal exchanging some of that thundering bass for the extra added naturalness and warmth. Overall, I do think that I made these headphones better. Stock, I feel that these headphones are very aggressive. The sound is so in your face and it makes you want to bob your head and you feel like you're in a loud club basically. But now you can lean back and relax and breathe and just enjoy music. I think that this goes to show that modding your headphones in order to improve their sound is totally doable, as long as you have some clear goals of what you want to achieve, as long as you start with something decent. This is very important because the M50s, while not being the best headphones in the world, are not the worst either. The drivers are capable of producing the entire frequency spectrum. I think this matters a lot. You gotta realize that this is more of a tuning operation. It's not turning crap into gold. You're just taking existing decent headphones and tweaking their sound to make it better for you. I'm not gonna draw absolute conclusions and I'm not gonna act like I'm a total expert in headphone modding because honestly I'm not. This is my first open back conversion, but I did keep my eyes open and my ears open, I guess, and I learned as much as I could from the process. And I think that if you start with some headphones that don't have huge openings in the baffle, that only have small ports like these have, you're gonna get a lot of benefits from opening the back of the cup without ruining the sound tremendously. A lot of the sound of these headphones, especially in the bass area, seems to be influenced by the space in front of the baffle. So the space between your eardrums, the ear pads, and the piece that's holding the driver against your ears. What's going on behind the driver influences the high mids and the sense of spaciousness, the soundstage, if you will. Opening the back of the cup will lead to a much more natural soundstage, a much wider soundstage, but you will lose a little bit of high mids. But there are things you can do to counteract this effect. There's no such thing as saying, hey, I want some more boosted high mids, so I'm just gonna do this and boost the high mids. It's very hard to do targeted boosting. It might be possible using some more advanced techniques, but what you can do to get around this is to cut away neighboring frequencies, take away some of the bass and some of the highs, and you obtain the effect of boosted mids without actually doing any boosting. For example, if you want to cut away the highs, you need to add filters in front of the driver. The filter can be anything. It can be felt, it can be sponge, foam, even toilet paper. Just try adding materials in front of the driver and see how it affects the highs. And vice versa, if you want to boost the highs, you want to take away any sort of filter that's in front of the driver. Maybe there's some foam there, maybe there's some cloth. Anything that's in front of the driver needs to go away. And then you can also try bringing the driver closer to your ear. This could probably mean using some thinner ear pads. It depends, your mileage may vary because different designs have different properties, but this generally boosts the high frequencies. When it comes to bass frequencies, these can actually be boosted, and there are two simple rules you can follow. The first one is to make sure you have a good seal around your ears, and then the more air you have inside there, the louder the bass will be. So if you get thicker pads, you're gonna get a boost in bass frequencies. More compliant pads like memory foam pads or gel pads can also add a bump in bass frequencies because the compliant pads act like springs, allowing headphones to vibrate against your head, adding bass resonance. So if you want to boost the bass, get more compliant pads. Helping the driver do bigger excursions can also improve the bass frequency response, and you can achieve this by opening the little ports the driver has on its back, using a X-Acto knife and being very careful to not cut the membrane. To cut away some bass, you want to do the exact opposite. You want to let air escape from here, you want to get thinner pads, you want to get stiffer pads, you want to open the ports on the baffle. This will also tune the frequency response, so you might have to experiment a little bit. Mids, I think, are highly dependent on your specific headphone design. They're dependent on the shape of the cups, on the size of the cups, but what people tend to do is to add absorbent materials in the ear cup. These absorbent materials can be cotton, they can be felt. There's no hard set in stone rule that tells you need to add this much. Experiment, have a lot of fun. The goal here is to reduce some of the resonances, and the result should be a more linear frequency response. Maybe you're gonna see a dip in low mids, maybe you're gonna see less peaks and valleys in the highs. The point is to experiment and try to make your headphones better and more suited for you, for what you like, for what you enjoy. Now, I hope that this video ignited a spark in you, a spark that tells you that you should mod your headphones. Go there, have fun, learn things about headphones. And if it did, maybe you can like the video, maybe you can subscribe to the channel, and also hit the notification icon so you can be notified when I upload a new video. But until then, my name is Andrew Dandrew. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you want to attempt this, check out the links in the description. And until the next time, I hope you'll have an awesome day. I hope you'll have an awesome week. And I'll see you next time.